The Xylos Intergalactic Research Station hung in the void between stars, its gleaming metallic structures rotating gently against the backdrop of distant nebulae. Renowned throughout three-star systems for its groundbreaking xenobiology research, the station specialized in studying emergent life forms from newly discovered planets. Today, however, the pristine order of the station's central laboratory had descended into minor chaos. "What do you mean, accidental acquisition?" demanded Director PHLYX, the gelatinous administrator's chromatophores flashing angry red patterns across their normally translucent surface. "Our extraction protocols are automated, but fail-safe. How did the probe return with a human director?" supplied Dr. Clark, his spherical body hovering anxiously as all 7 of his eyes blinked in uncomfortable synchronization. "A middle-aged female from a Class C planet in the Outer Rim. Designation Earth. According to the probe's logs, she was detected in an abandoned industrial zone in the eastern region of the continental mass the natives call Europe." "She was scavenging," interjected Zorp, Dr. Clark's Thakian assistant. The insectoid being's chitin exoskeleton clicked nervously as he fidgeted with his datapad. The probe mistook her chemical signature for a rare isotope sample and, well, extracted her along with the pile of metallic waste she was collecting. Zorp's antennae drooped in embarrassment. The error was in the calibration matrix. "I've already begun recalibrating all field probes to prevent future incidents." Director PHLYX pulsed a deep shade of purple. The closest their species came to a resigned sigh. "What's done is done. Is the specimen at least contained?" "Subject appears stable in quarantine chamber 3, Dr. Clark confirmed, projecting a holographic image of the containment room. "She regained consciousness approximately 18 standard time units ago." The 3 aliens gathered around the display, studying the human female pacing inside the sterile white chamber. She was of average height for her species, perhaps in her 5th decade of life, with gray-streaked brown hair tied back in a practical knot. Her face bore the weathered lines of someone who had spent years outdoors in harsh conditions, and her hands were rough and calloused. She wore simple, durable clothing, faded working pants, heavy boots, and a jacket with multiple pockets, all stained with substances the station's computers were still analyzing. "Curious," murmured Director PHLYX, observing the woman's behavior. "She doesn't appear to be exhibiting expected signs of psychological distress. No screaming, no attempt at self-harm, no catatonic shock response. That's what I found most unusual," Dr. Clark agreed. "Based on our understanding of primitive species reactions to first contact, she should be in a state of extreme terror. Instead, she's been methodically examining the room's features and occasionally shouting what our translators interpret as demands for the return of her cart and copper wiring." The woman in the chamber, whose name they would soon learn was Brenda Kowalski, had indeed been surprisingly composed. Upon awakening in a strange room with gleaming walls that seemed to shift color depending on the angle of view, her first reaction had not been panic but annoyance. She had banged on the transparent barrier, calling out, "Hey, whoever's in charge of this hospital, or whatever, I need to get back to work. I had a half-full cart of grade, a copper that better still be there when I get back." Now, as the 3 aliens watched, Brenda sat heavily on the edge of the sleeping platform, muttering to herself and occasionally glancing up at the ceiling as if trying to locate hidden cameras. "Have you conducted an initial biological assessment?" Director PHLYX asked. Zorp's mandibles clicked as he pulled up another holographic display. "Yes, and the results are concerning. The subject shows elevated levels of heavy metals in her bloodstream. Lead, mercury, cadmium, at concentrations that should be debilitating if not lethal. Background radiation readings are 22% above what's considered safe for her species. Trace elements of at least 40 synthetic compounds are present in her tissue samples, many of which are database flags as carcinogenic or neurotoxic. Yet she appears functional." Director PHLYX's surface rippled with confusion. "More than functional," Dr. Clark confirmed. "Her neural activity is sharp and focused. Cellular repair mechanisms are highly active. It's as if her body has adapted to process these toxins. I've never seen anything like it in a Class C species. Director PHLYX pulsed thoughtfully. Perhaps this is an opportunity. Since we have this human specimen, we might as well learn what we can before returning her to her habitat. Dr. Clark, I authorize standard fear response testing protocol. This could provide valuable data on human psychology. Dr. Clark's central eye widened. Are you sure, Director? The subject seems unusually resilient. What if she? Your concerns are noted, interrupted Director PHLYX, already floating toward the laboratory exit. But clearly, her current calmness is merely shock or cognitive dissonance. Once the reality of her situation fully registers, we'll see the expected fear responses. Keep me updated. As the director departed, Dr. Clark turned to Zorp with all 7 eyes narrowed in determination. Prepare the testing chamber and calibrate the low-level fear induction compounds. Let's start with standard visual and auditory stimuli, then progress to alpha grade if necessary. Zorp's antennae twitched nervously. Yes, Dr. Clark, he replied, hurrying to a nearby console while casting uncertain glances at the human woman who sat calmly on her bed, now examining a loose thread on her jacket sleeve with complete disinterest in her extraordinary circumstances. The testing chamber was prepared within the hour, a larger, more specialized version of the quarantine room. Its walls could project holograms of various scenarios. Its speakers could generate sounds across the full spectrum of human hearing, and hidden vents could release precisely calibrated chemical compounds designed to trigger specific emotional responses. MS. Brenda. Dr. Clark addressed the human through the translator as 2 hover drones escorted her to the new chamber. We apologize for the inconvenience of your accidental visit. We're conducting some routine assessments before arranging your return journey. Please follow the guidance lights to the next room. Brenda looked up at the spherical alien floating behind the transparent barrier, her expression revealing only mild curiosity rather than the terror they expected. Look, she said flatly, I don't know if I'm dreaming, hallucinating, or if someone slipped something in my coffee, but I've got bills to pay. That copper was worth at least 3 weeks of groceries. Either send me back or compensate me for my time. Dr. Clark blinked in surprise, all 7 eyes cycling through their lids in a wave-like pattern. The human's priorities were unexpected. We will ensure appropriate compensation, he assured her, making a mental note to include some rare earth metals in the memory-wiping package they'd eventually send her home with. Brenda shrugged and followed the pulsing blue lights into the testing chamber, where she took a seat in the single chair positioned in the center. Nice setup, she commented, looking around. Reminds me of that government facility they built after the chemical spill in '07. Same sterile feel. From the observation room, Dr. Clark and Zorp exchanged concerned glances before beginning the first test sequence. Initiating Visual Stimulus Protocol Alpha, Zorp announced, tapping commands into his console. The walls of the testing chamber suddenly displayed a series of images scientifically proven to trigger fear responses across nearly all sentient species. Predators with bared teeth lunging toward the viewer, heights with precipitous drops, dark confined spaces, and rapidly approaching objects on collision courses. Brenda squinted at the walls. Is this supposed to be some kind of movie? The resolution's pretty good, but the sound's off. She yawned and shifted in her chair. How long is this going to take? I haven't had lunch yet. Zorp clicked his mandibles in confusion. No elevated heart rate, no pupil dilation, no adrenaline spike. Nothing, Dr. Clark. It's as if she's watching weather patterns. Increase intensity and add auditory components, Dr. Clark ordered, leaning closer to the observation window. The visuals shifted to more personally relevant threats. House fires, industrial accidents, collapsing structures, while the speakers began emitting a combination of high-frequency alarm tones and sub-bass vibrations designed to create physical discomfort and trigger instinctive fear responses. Brenda winced and covered her ears. Hey, can you turn down that racket? I already have tinnitus from 20 years working near the stamping machines. This isn't helping. She glared at the ceiling. If you're trying to give me a headache, congratulations, it's working. Dr. Clara's central eye narrowed. Interesting. She's experiencing annoyance rather than fear. Physical discomfort registers, but without the expected emotional response. He adjusted his floating height thoughtfully. Let's proceed to chemical testing. Prepare the alpha amygdala activation compound. Zorp hesitated, his chitin shell changing to a slightly paler shade of brown. Are you sure, doctor? We haven't established baseline reactions to standard stimuli. Precisely why we need to escalate, Dr. Clark replied. This human's responses are anomalous. The alpha compound is mild enough to be safe while providing clearer neurological data. With reluctant clicks of his mandibles, Zorp activated the chamber's ventilation system. Small apertures in the walls released a colorless gas with a faint, acrid scent. The alpha amygdala activation compound, designed to stimulate primitive fear centers in the brain without causing lasting distress. Dr. Clark and Zorp watched intently as the gas diffused throughout the chamber. Brenda noticed the change in air quality immediately, her posture straightening as she inhaled. But instead of the expected tension or panic, an extraordinary transformation occurred across her features. The perpetual furrow between her brows smoothed out. The tight set of her jaw relaxed. She took another deep breath through her nose, and then, most shocking of all, she smiled. "Oh," she said, her voice softer than they'd heard before. "That smell, it takes me right back. Tuesday mornings, when a plastics recycling plant at the end of our street would burn the defective batches." She closed her eyes, inhaling again. The wind would blow just right, carrying it over our neighborhood. Just like this. She opened her eyes, looking almost nostalgic. "Smells like home." In the observation room, Zorp dropped his data pad with a clatter. Dr. Clark's body, normally a perfect sphere, developed an indentation as if physically impacted by the human's reaction. "Impossible," Dr. Clark whispered. "The compound is specifically formulated to trigger a fear response in the limbic system. It contains synthetic versions of predator pheromones and stress markers from 20 different species. Her biometric readings actually show decreased tension," Zorp reported, retrieving his data pad with trembling appendages. "Heart rate lowered by 7 beats per minute. Cortisol levels dropping. This is the opposite of the intended effect." Dr. Clark spun in a tight circle, a sign of intense thought in his species. "Perhaps there's a unique interaction with human physiology we haven't accounted for. Flush the chamber and prepare the beta fright variant." The ventilation system quickly cleared the alpha compound and introduced a new gas. This one with a distinctive sulfurous odor that most species found instinctively repulsive, reminiscent of decay and danger. Brenda sniffed the air, her eyebrows rising in recognition. "Well, now that's different," she said conversationally, as if discussing wine notes with a friend. "This reminds me of the sewers after summer rain, especially near the old tannery. When I was a kid, we used to hold our breath passing that corner." She chuckled. "We made a game of it. Timed how long we could go without breathing. My record was 2 minutes, 17 seconds. Dr. Clark's floating became erratic. This defies all established xenopsychological models. The beta compound contains trace elements that should trigger disgust reflexes at a minimum." "Should we abort the testing sequence?" Zorp asked, his exoskeleton now chattering with nerves. "No," Dr. Clark replied firmly, though 2 of his 7 eyes had closed completely, a sign of stress in his species. "This is unprecedented data. We need to understand the extent of this anomaly. Prepare the gamma terror compound." Zorp's mandibles clicked rapidly in alarm. "Gamma terror? But Dr. Clark, that's designed for stress testing military personnel from advanced spacefaring civilizations. It induces controlled hallucinations and fear responses even in species with emotional suppression training." "Precisely why we must try it," Dr. Clark insisted. "This human is demonstrating resistance beyond anything in our records. Director PHLYX will want comprehensive data." With reluctant movements, Zorp calibrated the system for the new compound. "Gamma terror releasing now. Please monitor for adverse reactions. Emergency neutralization on standby. The new gas was slightly green-tinged as it entered the chamber, diffusing rapidly around Brenda. This compound was designed not only to trigger fear responses, but to temporarily enhance neural activity in regions associated with threat recognition and nightmare formation. Brenda coughed and rubbed her eyes, which had begun watering. "This one's a bit harsh," she commented, blinking rapidly. "Makes my eyes sting. Reminds me of when Mrs. Nowak's microwave shorted out in the apartment below ours. The whole building smelled like this for weeks." She waved her hand in front of her face. "Not pleasant, but I've smelled worse. Last year, when the battery recycling facility had that fire, now that was something. Birds fell right out of the sky." From the observation room, Dr. Clark stared in disbelief. "She's exhibiting mild physical irritation, but none of the psychological effects. No hallucinations, no elevated fear response." "Should I increase the concentration?" Zorp asked uncertainly. "No," Dr. Clark replied. "Maintain current levels. Let's see if she offers more information about her environment. This could be enlightening." Indeed, as the testing continued, Brenda began sharing casual stories about her life on Earth, each one more horrifying to her alien observers than the last. She spoke of a river near her home that changed colors from day to day, depending on which factory was dumping waste, of neighborhood children who made games out of avoiding rainbow puddles of chemicals, of air that had a taste to it, depending on the wind direction. "You get used to it," Brenda explained with a shrug. "Been living in that industrial zone for 43 years now. My grandfather worked in the steel mill before it closed, my father in the chemical plant before it got bought out and automated. I take what work I can get, mostly salvage from the abandoned factories. There's good copper in those old machines if you know where to look." She described a daily life surrounded by conditions that the aliens' databases classified as severe environmental hazards, with the casual acceptance of someone discussing mild weather variations. "Dr. Clark," Zorp whispered, his voice module barely audible, "I think we need to consult a specialist. This is beyond our expertise." Dr. Clark reluctantly agreed, and within the hour, Dr. Gleep, the station's foremost xenopsychologist, a silicon-based life form with a body resembling polished obsidian with pulsating veins of light, joined them in the observation room. "Fascinating," Dr. Gleep hummed after reviewing the test data and observing Brenda, who was now calmly eating a nutrient pack designed to be compatible with human digestive systems. "In my 300 years of practice, I've never encountered such profound environmental adaptation." "What's your assessment?" Dr. Clark asked. Dr. Gleep's surface lights pulsed thoughtfully. "I believe we're observing a form of extreme environmental adaptive disorder. This human has lived her entire life in conditions that would be classified as toxic and dangerous by her own species standards. Her neurological and psychological systems have recalibrated to normalize these conditions as baseline reality." "Is it a mental illness?" Zorp asked. "No," Dr. Gleep responded. "It's an adaptation, a survival mechanism. What should trigger fear or disgust has been reclassified in her brain as normal or even comforting because it represents the familiar. Her body has likely developed unusual tolerance mechanisms for toxins as well." "Let's try one more test," Dr. Clark suggested. "Something based on predator pheromones rather than industrial chemicals." They released a compound derived from the scent markers of Earth's top predators, carefully synthesized to trigger instinctive fear responses in humans. A mixture of big cat, shark, and bear warning signals that should bypass conscious thought and activate primal fear. Brenda merely sneezed, then wrinkled her nose. "Huh, that reminds me of a smell from those giant rats in the junkyard after they get into the poison bait." She shook her head. "They grow big as cats back home. One tried to steal my sandwich last month. Had to fight it off with my wrench." Dr. Gleep's light patterns stuttered in shock. I have no framework for understanding this level of adaptation." Dr. Clark floated in place, silently for several moments, all 7 of his eyes blinking in different patterns as he processed this information. Finally, he turned to Zorp. "Contact Director PHLYX. Tell them we need authorization for Omega Protocol. Both Zorp and Dr. Gleep reacted with alarm. Zorp's exoskeleton rattled audibly, while Dr. Gleep's light patterns flared bright white. Omega strain? That's reserved for military-grade testing of Class A species. Zorp protested. It's barely legal under galactic Concordat regulations. Precisely why we need proper authorization, Dr. Clark replied calmly. This human is demonstrating resilience that defies our understanding. Director PHLYX wanted comprehensive data. This will provide it. Dr. Gleep vibrated with concern. Dr. Clark, I must register my professional objection. Omega strain was designed for species with advanced neurological shielding. Using it on a Class C organism, regardless of apparent resilience, could constitute an ethical violation. Your objection is noted, Dr. Clark acknowledged. But consider the scientific value. If this human truly has developed adaptive mechanisms to environmental extremes, understanding those mechanisms could revolutionize xenobiology. It could inform habitat adaptation for colonization of harsh worlds. After a tense debate, Director PHLYX eventually granted authorization, swayed by the unprecedented nature of Brenda's responses and the potential scientific breakthrough. The Omega strain was prepared with extreme caution, a colorless, odorless gas designed to bypass sensory detection entirely and act directly on the most primitive areas of the brain, creating a sense of existential dread and imminent doom. Last chance to reconsider, Dr. Gleep warned as they prepared to release the compound. Proceed, Dr. Clark instructed, but maintain emergency neutralization protocols on immediate standby. The Omega strain was released into the chamber. Unlike the previous compounds, this one created no visible effect, no detectable scent or irritation. It worked on a deeper level, creating an atmospheric sense of malevolence and danger that should trigger immediate fight-or-flight responses even in the most stoic subjects. From the observation room, the three aliens watched intently as Brenda sat in her chair. Initially, she showed no reaction. Then, gradually, her expression changed. She frowned slightly, looking around the room with narrowed eyes, as if searching for something just out of sight. Her posture tensed almost imperceptibly. Initial response detected, Zorp whispered. Heightened alertness, environmental scanning, classic first-stage fear response. But then Brenda's expression shifted again. The tension in her shoulders eased. She shrugged and leaned back in her chair. This feeling, she said, her voice clear through the chamber's audio system. It's familiar somehow. Exactly like that day when those guys in full hazmat suits came to measure that leaking barrel I found last week. They were all nervous, kept talking about existential risk, and paid me to keep quiet about it. She chuckled and actually yawned. Thought they were joking at the time. In the observation room, the reaction was catastrophic. Zorp made a high-pitched keening sound and collapsed, his exoskeleton turning a sickly pale blue. Dr. Gleep began vibrating uncontrollably, the light patterns in his obsidian body becoming erratic and unstable. Even Dr. Clark, normally composed regardless of circumstances, had deflated slightly, his perfectly spherical form developing irregular dimples as his gravitational control wavered. Shut it down, Dr. Clark whispered. Shut down all testing immediately. Flush all compounds from the chamber. The ventilation system whirred into emergency mode, rapidly clearing the Omega strain and replacing it with purified air. Dr. Clark stared at Brenda through the observation window, no longer seeing an experimental subject, but something both magnificent and terrifying, a testament to the almost unfathomable adaptability of life. What kind of world did she come from? Zorp asked weakly as his systems began to recover. A world we need to learn more about, Dr. Clark replied, his voice hushed with something approaching reverence or fear. Contact Director PHLYX immediately. This goes beyond standard research protocols. Within hours, news of the fear-immune human had spread throughout the Xylo station. Within days, it had reached the attention of the Galactic Council itself. Brenda Kowalski, a simple scrap collector from a polluted corner of Earth, had become the subject of intense scientific interest across multiple star systems. The Council's directive was clear. Brenda was to be treated not as a research subject, but as an honored guest, and possibly managed as a potential biological hazard. Her apparent immunity to compounds designed to trigger fear in the galaxy's most hardened species raised unsettling questions about human adaptability and what it might mean for galactic dynamics if humans ever developed interstellar travel. Brenda found herself relocated from the testing chamber to a comfortable suite designed to approximate human living quarters, though she complained about the lack of Earth television channels and the too soft mattress, like sleeping on a marshmallow. How's a body supposed to get proper rest? A week after the infamous Omega strain test, Dr. Clark floated into Brenda's new quarters, accompanied by Zorp, who still maintained a nervous distance from the human woman. MS. Brenda, Dr. Clark began, his voice module adjusted to project respectful tones. On behalf of the Xylos Research Station and the Galactic Scientific Consortium, I would like to propose an arrangement. Brenda looked up from the alien equivalent of a magazine she'd been flipping through. If it's about getting me home, I'm listening. I've got rent due next week. Actually, Dr. Clark continued, we would like to offer you a position as a research consultant. You're unique. Adaptations to environmental stressors represent an unprecedented scientific opportunity. In exchange for your voluntary participation in carefully monitored studies, we can offer substantial compensation. Brenda's eyes narrowed suspiciously. What kind of compensation are we talking about? Full living accommodations here on the station, with Earth-compatible amenities. Financial remuneration that would be considered significant by your planet's standards. And Dr. Clark added, knowing this would be important, regular fund transfers to any family members on Earth you designate. Brenda sat back, arms crossed over her chest as she considered the offer. And what exactly would I have to do? More sitting in rooms with weird smells. Primarily, yes, Dr. Clark confirmed. We wish to understand the full extent of your adaptive capabilities and potentially how they developed. This could provide valuable insights for habitation of extreme environments. Additionally, your knowledge of surviving in challenging conditions could be invaluable for certain exploratory missions. Brenda said skeptically. And how long would this arrangement last? We propose an initial contract of 1 Earth year, after which you could choose to return home or renew terms. Brenda thought for a moment, her weathered face impassive. Finally, she nodded. On one condition. My nephew Tommy, he's got 2 kids and a medical condition your fancy scanners would probably call industrial chemical exposure during development. He needs regular treatments. You make sure he's covered, good care, not the budget clinic, and I'll sit in whatever weird gas chambers you want. Dr. Clark's central, I widened in what might have been respect. Those terms are acceptable. We will draft the agreement immediately. And so began Brenda Kowalski's new career as an interstellar consultant on environmental extremes. The initial research yielded breakthrough understanding of human adaptive capabilities, leading to revised xenobiological models across multiple scientific disciplines. But Brenda's greatest contributions came later, when the Xylos station began incorporating her as an advisor on exploration missions to planets previously considered too hostile for investigation. You're overthinking this, Brenda told a team preparing to explore a world with atmospheric acid levels that would dissolve standard protection gear within hours. She pointed to a weak spot in their equipment design with the same casual confidence she once used to identify valuable scrap in abandoned factories. Reinforce this seam with a double layer. That's where the corrosion will hit first. And carry neutralizer paste in external pouches, not internal compartments. When the acid eats through your outer layer, and it will, you want to reach that paste fast. The team leader, a 6-limbed Norgavian physicist, stared at her in horror. You speak as if rapid corrosion is acceptable. Brenda shrugged. Nothing's ever perfect. Plan for failure. That's how you survive. Been that way back home as long as I can remember. The factory safety inspector would come once a year. Everyone would panic for a week getting things up to code. Then the day after he left, all the safety guards would come right back off the machines because they slowed production. She grinned. You learn to keep your fingers clear and your eyes open. Her practical, sometimes alarming advice, delivered with the matter-of-fact tone of someone discussing mild weather inconveniences, saved countless research missions and several lives. When a team of exobiologists became stranded on a moon with toxic mud geysers, it was Brenda who calmly talked them through constructing makeshift filtration from their damaged equipment. That blue mud looks just like the stuff that pools behind the battery plant back home. You can make it safe to touch, not drink, mind you, just touch by filtering it through a layer of your suit insulation. Just like we used to strain the creek water through cotton before washing our garden vegetables. 6 months into her contract, Brenda received a communication from the Galactic Council itself. Humans, previously classified as a developing technological species of moderate interest, had been reassessed. They were now categorized as environmentally adaptive extremophiles with concerning resilience traits. Earth, rather than being viewed merely as a modestly polluted developing world, was reclassified as a toxicity training ground, producing organisms with alarming adaptive capabilities. "I don't see what the fuss is about," Brenda commented when Dr. Clark shared the news. "Everyone back home manages just fine. Well, mostly fine. We got higher cancer rates than the national average, sure, and that summer when the chemical plant exploded wasn't great. But people adapt. That's what we do." Dr. Clark, who had over the months developed something approaching friendship with the remarkable human, spun slowly in place, his species equivalent of a thoughtful nod. "What you consider adaptation, MS. Brenda, most species would consider extraordinary evolution under pressure. The environments you describe as merely inconvenient would be classified as lethal disaster zones by most galactic standards." Brenda laughed. "You space folks are just soft, that's all. A little chemical exposure builds character." Nearly a year after her accidental abduction, Brenda stood on the observation deck of the Xylos station, gazing out at the stars while dressed in the custom environmental suit that had been designed for her upcoming mission. She would be accompanying a specialized team to Nexus 6, a planet rich in rare minerals, but considered nearly unapproachable due to its caustic atmosphere and unpredictable electromagnetic storms. Zorp, who had gradually overcome his fear of Brenda and now served as her personal assistant, checked her equipment readouts with his datapad. "All systems optimal, MS. Brenda, though I still don't understand why you insisted on reducing the filtration redundancies." Brenda tapped the simplified breathing apparatus she demanded. "Too many backup systems just means more things to break when you need them most. Keep it simple, that's my motto. If something goes wrong, you need to be able to fix it with whatever you've got on hand. Can't do that with overcomplicated gadgets." Dr. Clark floated into the observation deck, all 7 of his eyes clear and bright, a sign of good news. "The Council has approved your contract extension, MS. Brenda, with a substantial increase in compensation, as requested." Brenda nodded, satisfaction evident in her slight smile. "Good. Tommy's kids are doing better with the treatments you arranged, but my niece just had a baby, born with some respiratory issues, probably from all those years she lived downwind from the plastics factory. They'll need support too." Dr. Clark's central I blinked slowly, still sometimes stunned by the casual way Brenda referenced conditions that would constitute a planetary emergency on most civilized worlds. "May I ask a personal question, MS. Brenda?" "Shoot," she replied, adjusting a valve on her suit. "Do you ever resent your world for the conditions you were raised in?" Brenda looked surprised, then thoughtful. "Never really thought about it that way. It's just home, you know. Sometimes it stinks. Sometimes the water comes out of the tap looking like weak coffee. Sometimes you get a rash from the morning fog. But it's where I belong." She smiled wryly. "Though I gotta admit, it's been nice having clean air to breathe this past year. My lungs haven't felt this good since I was a kid." 3 days later, the expedition to Nexus 6 departed. The scientific team included 12 of the station's top researchers, equipped with the most advanced protective technology available, and one human woman whose lifetime in one of Earth's most polluted industrial zones had prepared her better than any training program could. As their ship approached the swirling, ominous atmosphere of Nexus 6, the team commander, a respected vortexian geologist, turned to Brenda with compound eyes wide with apprehension. Initial readings are worse than projected. The Eastern Hemisphere is experiencing a major corrosive storm system. Perhaps we should delay the mission until conditions improve. Brenda leaned forward to study the readouts, then shrugged with a nonchalance that still unnerved her alien colleagues. Nah, we can work with this. Reminds me of the summer they had that big chemical fire at the solvent plant. The air was so bad, they told everyone to stay indoors for 3 weeks straight. She grinned. I still had to go to work, of course. You learn to hold your breath at the right times and recognize when the wind shifts. We'll be fine. As the ship began its descent through the caustic clouds of Nexur 6, Brenda looked out the viewport at the hostile alien world that, to her experienced eyes, seemed oddly familiar. She chuckled to herself and murmured, "These kids nowadays, with their fancy suits and panic attacks over a little toxic atmosphere. They have no idea what tough really is." Behind her, the team of highly educated alien scientists, representatives of species that had mastered interstellar travel and unraveled the fundamental secrets of the universe, exchanged nervous glances and checked their equipment one final time, quietly grateful for the presence of the most terrifying organism they had ever encountered. An ordinary human woman who had spent her life inhaling what most species would consider weapons-grade chemical warfare and called it home.